Time. It goes on and on, never waiting for any particular individual. It loops endlessly, and things get lost on the wayside if it isn't deemed important. This video will focus on the portrayal of time in Houseki no Kuni and how it's staged in a way to make folks reflect on the past, look towards the future, but ultimately exist in the present. Now we've had several time skips in this series already. For those that have been caught up with the manga, we're actually in our currently longest time skip of the entire series, or honestly any series that I know of, as we're at the end of chapter 95. We are waiting for 10,000 years, and in real life the series has still been on hiatus for a minimum of a year at this point. So until we get chapter 96, we don't really know what the outcome of such a ginormous time skip has been, but we can look back at the two previous time skips to see how Ichikawa utilizes time in such a unique way to showcase these immortal beings, these gems, in a forced static state, because they don't actually change, regardless of how much physical or supposed mental change that these gems go throughout their journey in Houseki no Kuni. One of the most interesting points that Natalie X Hunter and their video, The Horror of Time in Houseki no Kuni, which is kind of the foundation for this video analysis and I guess literature review, is that they bring up this really interesting point. So in Houseki no Kuni, outside of the 10,000 years time skip that we had others at 102 years, which was the first time skip that we had, and 220 years. Now, what Natalie brings up is that this example of when you hear that the Jurassic period was 241 million years ago, it might as well round it down to a much easier number to digest, like 140 million years. But that makes 1 full million years suddenly feel super negligible, which is why it's interesting that Ichikawa uses not round figures for the time skips, especially the first two. Why add those 2 extra years for the 102 time skip, and why add the extra 20 years for the second time skip? Why not round it down to 100 and maybe 200? Because it makes the impact of when we get our final one at 10,000, which is a perfectly round figure, and as Natalie states, is just 10,000 years is basically the beginning of civilization on Earth. It's really interesting that Ichikawa uses this extra numbers of years to show just how meaningless time can be. Again, with these immortal beings, change doesn't really help these gems, foes, especially around memory and these inclusions. Let me backtrack a little bit. So inclusions for our gems is the same thing as maybe our nerves or our memory storage system in our brain, where there's only a limited amount of space or limited amount of retention or recall that we can get with our nerves. So the irony is that these gems have undying bodies. We as humans have very dying bodies that decay and age and rot, but we have the same total limited capacity of storage for what we can remember, and memories form a significant part of our personality, how we interact with others. So not being able to hold on to these important memories, especially if these gems who have a longer day-to-day period of mundanity and routines, that kind of information gets lost in the wayside. It doesn't stay. And that's why these gems use journals and logs and other ways to retain the events that happen every day, which is one of the big reasons that I myself journal, because I don't remember what I did on a Tuesday. I don't even remember what I ate last night. I mean, I do, but for the sake of this argument, I don't. And it makes us wonder, how much change is enough for it to cause a significant deviation in the way that we behave? Hypersensitized, as Zerlode in his video Breaking Houseki no Kuni Apart, The Sum of All Scars, states that after the first initial time skip of 102 years, when Goshe and Morgana were taken, Fos actually understands what it means to feel the weight of years gone by, like Yellow Diamond. And I feel like this isn't the point where Fos actually feels this time pressure that exists. As Natalie points out, Fos And these gems understand the kind of seasonal changes from especially winter to spring. That is the biggest change in seasons that forms both a visual and a mental shift in personality, since that's when during winter is when these gems go into hibernation. Usually they just skip over it every year, so they only see it 3/4 of the year. But Phos doesn't. Phos is super keen and has always been super keen since the start of our story, because they have this crushing urgence that Cinnabar will get taken if Phos takes too long. So even if they never count the specific days that they go by, as Zeralode points out, that the individual days while they were on the moon was specifically stated by Phos, that doesn't mean that they've just gotten hypersensitive. It's just Phos, with their new brain and their new analytical prowess, uses these numbers as a way of counting, but they've always been internally doing this all along with these seasonal shifts. Just because that Phos doesn't recognize, I think the most iconic example that's used is Phos with the butterflies, and that 10 days have completely passed by them. While that's a chance to point out that, 10 days standing in a place seems pretty hard to miss as a human being, but as for these gems that don't really do much and they wait for these Lunarian attacks anyways, 10 days isn't a long period of time that they need to account for to begin with. So I feel like it's more of a skewed perspective of us as human beings, where 10 days is a significant amount of time. But when you're in the middle of a grind, whether you're working or whether you're trying to just get through life and you have a busy schedule, you don't actually pay attention to how much time passes by and the weeks fly by. So I think being able to extend the amount of leeway that we give for the passage of time to these gems is necessary to have this kind of discussion about time and the passage of time. And that's why these time skips don't feel as hard as they do. Alexander, in his video on nostalgia and perspective in Houseki no Kuni, brings up this interesting point that actually reflecting on the past is often healthy, because it can ground you and remind you of the value of living. But I feel like it's the absolute opposite in the case for Phos. Phos remembering old memories and remembering this old trauma is what keeps them on the path towards destruction and self-hate. And that's why during our second time skip with Enma, he specifically states that make sure that Phos retains the 200 years or 220 years of suffering that Phos has gone through during our second time skip. Which goes to the point, is Ichikawa saying that the past and all that pain, is it really important to hold on to that? Does that really make us a better person? And I don't think so. I think it's more important to be able to let go of this trauma, be able to take in that ignorance, the common phrase, ignorance is bliss. That is how these gems become happy. And that's why Yellow Diamond, who is the biggest parallel to Phos, especially in the terms of time, as Yellow Diamond is our elder. They've been living for at least 10,000 years. When they could not remember anything about their past, and by not remembering is they don't remember how to fight anymore. They don't know why they're fighting the Lunarians. They don't even recall their past partners that have been taken away by the Lunarians some thousands of years ago. They were able to be happy day by day and just continue to exist. And that kind of trauma doesn't eat at them every waking moment. With us humans, time might be able to heal all wounds, but with these gems, they have an infinite amount of time. So does it really heal if you keep referring back to the past? And the answer is no. Because when Yellow Diamond has to be confronted with the fact that their own gems are now enemies to themselves and that talking is not a viable option, that they begin to shatter. And that weight that should have been lifted when they went to the moon actually got compounded because they were reinforced with the fact that these partners that they'd forgotten about just ended up being parts of the dust of the moon. And it's a real shame that they had to live with that reality literally face to face in their minds every waking day in the moon, enough for them to off themselves off, because that kind of recurring trauma is not something that you can run away from. That whether you're looking back into the past or being anxious about the future, none of those really give the same kind of peace of mind as just existing in the moment and being present in the moment. And I think it'd be really interesting to see Fos just maybe even completely forgetting about these gems and this pain and existing for the next 10,000 years, and we see the outcome of that, and that it would be no different from the blissful first 300 years of their life, not having any kind of responsibility or any kind of care, and just living, waking up, doing some kind of duty that before it was assigned by Congo, now it's just assigned to themselves, and just carrying on time and time again. So I wanted to add this sort of outro that's usually audio only, but this time I'll use my face, because some of you have seen my face, and I think with my live stream I'm going to start using my face as well, so this is a nice change. This video, especially for Novid, thank you so much, pause and select. I know I really pushed it to the end of the month, even though I had this idea for this video for a long time, and I wanted to do a lot of different types of effects, but it ended up just being clip selection and, you know, time as the center of the main theme of this video. I didn't spend that much time on this video. You know, it is what it is, so we'll try again next year. I really enjoyed this literature review, and this was my first unscripted Houseki no Kuni video, and I don't know if you could tell, for those that obviously aren't just watching this for Novid, but have been watching my Houseki no Kuni content. Let me know, was it completely different? Is this unscripted version better? Does it flow better, or do you like the way that I just talk? But yeah, that is all. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.